up, guys? RyHo here yet again, and today I want to talk to you about one of my favorite horror movies. Definitely, I would imagine that it's also one of yours. It usually ranks up pretty high, but if somehow you haven't seen it, you need to go out and see it, and this is The Evil Dead. The Evil Dead came out around 81. I think it started filming, though, as early as, like, 79. Previous to this, director Sam Raimi, who is now famous for all kinds of different movies, and his crew of like Bob Tapert, Bruce Campbell, Scott Spiegel, Ted Raimi, all this, this group. Previous to this, what they did basically was to get money to make this, they made a short film called Within the Woods, which is a really similar story to this, as a bunch of kids being attacked by demonic forces in the woods, which is very much the story of Evil Dead. They made that movie, screened it, got some reviews for it, and then used that to get funding to make this movie. So they went to different professionals and they got money to do this, like lawyers and stuff like that. So after they got together, they scrambled together like $375,000. They made Evil Dead. At the time this came out, it's your Friday the 13th and Halloween and a lot of slashers, and this movie's a very different movie. It has that feel, that vibe. They're in the woods, a bunch of teenagers or young people out partying kind of thing. But this movie's very different because it has this supernatural element, this demonic element. Also, it has a really good story. It was also written by Sam Raimi. And it has this story about this demonic book called the Niturin Demanta. It would become known as the Necronomicon in later films, but in this one it wasn't called that. And the story basically is that this guy was researching it, read some incantation, I believe some kind of demon possessed his wife, and he went through this harrowing event inside the cabin. And they're up there now, they got this really cheap cabin for the weekend to party, and they find this recording in the basement, and they play it, and shit goes to hell, basically. The acting isn't, of course, it's not incredible or anything like that, but we have Bruce Campbell's real first appearance as Ash, a completely different Ash than we'd see in other films, He's a really unique, sort of naive character in this one, and that sort of plays into the character in this film. They needed him sort of to be like that for the story, so he could get tricked by the monsters a few times. And, it sort of works out that way. You also have Ellen Sandweiss plays sister. And just a decent cast. I think that maybe they weren't the greatest actors, but they do a great job of making themselves seem like a group of friends out having, a good time kind of thing. And, just a really cool film. Again, directed by Raimi, and he had this, he doesn't really use this much anymore, but he had this real frenetic style, really fast-paced, in your face, a lot of great camera angles, and really well put together scenes. He also moves the camera around a lot like a handy cam, has somebody actually running around with it. And it creates this sort of almost slapstick feel to the movie. It is very comedic at points, but it's not like the rest of the series. The rest of the series would really follow down the comedic route, as you guys know, and I'll talk about them later. But this one sort of keeps the real sort of scary vibe of like a wilderness slasher movie in a way, but sort of has that slapstick comedy in there, especially with his style. The music goes with that too. The music in the film sometimes is really classical when he's got these really classic shots. There are points in the movie where it's really like watching an old black and white horror movie, shots of the moon and things like that. And the music sort of goes with that at that time, but then sometimes when it's in the weirder scenes, there's an entire scene where a woman gets raped by a tree in this movie. You gotta see it to believe it. The music is really experimental and sound effect based and things like that. And I just think it's a really well put together movie. This is what happens when you get a really good director putting together a movie. Of course, Raimi would show that he's a great director down the line. Of course, if you hate the Spider-Man movies, I don't blame you. But I just think that this was like a really great effort at a time when some of the movies weren't that well put together. I think it has a really cool story again, decent acting, and just something different at a time where there was a lot of slashers that had this supernatural vibe and element to it that just really sort of switched it up. And I think, all that put together is why today Evil Dead is a total classic, a must-see, very different from the rest of the series. Although the storyline to the Evil Dead and from, Within the Woods would get recycled again with Evil Dead 2 in a way, but that's something I'll talk about later. But anyway, if somehow, again, if you haven't seen it, you got to go out and see it. This is just a total classic, and definitely one of my favorite movies to watch, especially around Halloween, which is coming up. So anyway, guys, that's all I have to say with Evil Dead. I hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are coming up, so I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.